Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. As Manitobans continue to do their part to flatten the COVID curve, we are now in a position to slowly and carefully begin to reopen our economy. That is because Manitobans have stuck to the fundamentals, and Manitobans have got us to where we are today, and I again say thank you. The health and well-being of all Manitobans has been and is going to continue to be our top priority as a government during this global health and financial pandemic, and I know it's the top priority of Manitobans out there as well. We've been at the forefront of supporting our frontline health workers and others in our social services as well. We've already spent hundreds of millions of dollars, invested hundreds of millions of additional dollars that couldn't possibly have been budgeted in the absence of the knowledge of this pandemic, but are being allocated to support that front line. We were the first province in Canada to sign on to the federal order for personal protective equipment. This week we offered support, direct support to some of our most vulnerable Manitobans, our seniors. Our Help Next Door Manitoba portal has seen nearly 7,000 Manitobans sign up to help, and that speaks to the commitment that we have as people to one another. Over 1,700 individuals are receiving treatment through our online mental health support program, and I'm told that other provinces are now looking at adopting this important support for those who are experiencing the stresses of this COVID pandemic. We are also at the forefront of supporting our small business communities. We've introduced a $120 million budgeted gap protection plan that I'll be able to give you a progress report on early next week. But we've had a tremendous response from Manitoba small businesses who really need the support to get them through this valley we're in right now. We've also introduced a $120 million program to support students to assist them to get summer employment opportunities, and we're excited to give you a bit of a progress report on that early next week as well. We were the first province to join with the federal government and commit to sharing in a program which will assist commercial rent assistance program for those who are in a challenging situation with respect, to put it mildly, with respect to their commercial rent obligations. Today, I can say that we are proud to announce again additional supports to help us get through this together as a province. We are a resilient province. Many of us were raised with certain adages and beliefs that we're probably reflecting on more in the midst of this pandemic than we may have in the past. Certainly for me, being raised by a third-generation Manitoba farmer and a teacher mother, I was raised with the adage that you're responsible for leaving things better than you found them. And I've taken that adage with me in my life as a teacher, as a small business person, and in my political career, and I know that many Manitobans live with that creed. I got into politics to try to help my town. I've had the chance along the way to help my province and my country, and I've been proud to do my best to do that. It has guided my efforts, and I know it guides Manitobans' efforts and the decisions they're making every day as they keep themselves safe. They know that they're also helping others be safe too. Keep up the great work. Our focus as a government has been to fix and repair and to rebuild, to get ourselves in a position as Manitobans where we can be more resilient as people and more resilient as a province. And so today I am very, very pleased to announce that our Manitoba Restart program is going to see an additional $500 million investment over the next 2 years in shovel-worthy infrastructure projects to help stimulate our economy. This is in addition to the previously budgeted $3 billion in projects that we have committed to. Je suis fier d'annoncer le programme de redémarrage du Manitoba qui verra un investissement supplémentaire de 500 millions de dollars au cours de 2 prochaines années dans des projets d'infrastructure pour aider à stimuler notre économie. Cela s'ajoute aux 3 milliards de dollars de projets qui nous avons déjà budgétés au cours de 2 prochaines années. Some of these projects will include the categories of water and sewer projects through the Municipal Water Services Board, road and highway resurfacing and repairs, bridge repairs, municipal infrastructure priorities, and in addition, cost-sharing construction projects with other levels of government. As we negotiate those, I should mention that this commitment does not include the additional contributions that would be made by other levels of government, but is our commitment as a government on behalf of Manitobans. We believe that these projects are vital to the growth of our communities across our province. These projects will improve the services we provide to Manitobans. They'll improve the quality of life for all Manitobans. We know that the Manitoba construction industry, like all of us, has experienced a downturn in demand in recent weeks and months. But we also know that our Manitoba heavy construction industry and other construction industry participants are ready to work, and they want to work, and they're ready to ramp up their efforts safely to be part of Manitoba's recovery efforts as well. Today's announcement builds on our commitment to ensure critical funding as well to Manitoba municipalities as promised in Budget 2020. Despite unprecedented financial pressures on our provincial government and record borrowing levels, I and my colleagues were able to assure over 40 municipalities personally in the past week that they will be receiving, as will all our municipalities, our committed budgeted amounts in support of their governments. I believe that this is important in sustaining and supporting our partners as they too face the challenges that Manitobans are facing individually, that small businesses are facing, and that our government, of course, is facing in terms of dealing with the consequences of this historic pandemic. Through good planning, we've been able to get ahead of the COVID-19 pandemic. Through good decision-making and actions on the part not only of your government, but of course of Manitobans individually and collectively, we've been able to do what we've done, to stay ahead of the virus, not to chase it. And we must remain vigilant. There's no room for complacency. We need 100% support from Manitobans. We do not want a COVID comeback. The case numbers in Manitoba do appear to be low, but that is no reason to believe that the risks of COVID-19 are low. They are not low, in particular for those who have preconditions that will make them more susceptible to this virus, in particular to those who are older in our province. Our seniors have experienced disproportionately the greatest stress as a consequence of this pandemic. And so I say again, thank you to the seniors of our province for enduring this experience. We are with you, we're thinking of you, and I want all Manitobans to remember to stay positive and patient and encourage one another. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. Help each other, stay supportive, stay vigilant, and together we're going to beat this thing. Thank you. I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. A reminder to our reporters online, you will have one preliminary question and one follow-up. Up first this morning from CBC Radio Canada, Laïsa.
Yes, Laïsa, CBC Radio Canada. Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier Ministre. My question would be, we have like a Manitoban advocate for children and youth address the fact that there's no any mental health support put in place for young people in Manitoba during the pandemic. What do you respond about that? Will we see that help for young Manitobans? And if so, when and in what form?
Merci pour votre question. Nous avons offert cette semaine, dans le dernier mois, une suite de programmes pour appuyer les jeunes personnes en Manitoba, principalement l'appui pour le jeune personne qui souhaite inscrire dans l'institution post-secondaire additionnelle, l'appui pour le travail, pour trouver le travail, mais aussi pour une 50-50% pour appuyer les petites entreprises pour embaucher les jeunes personnes. We have done several programs. I highlight two now. The 50-50 support for employing young Manitobans that we're offering is already being well received, and we look forward to promoting that even more to help young people find work during this pandemic. This is very important, not exclusively for young people looking to go to post-secondary, though that is important. In addition, we announced yesterday a 50% increase up to from $10 million to $15 million for our matching scholarship programs to encourage more supports to be there for young people to continue to go on with their education. And there are several other programs that we've offered as well for entrepreneurs, for small business people that many young Manitobans will benefit from as well.
Mr. Premier, for my other question, I would say we still have Manitoba truck drivers that need to cross the border and so on. But this transportation creates risk for population. How does Manitoba government balance the risk and safety, and how is it monitored to trucking industry and the transportation of goods by truck?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Of course, it's raised in its level of concern because of the Paul's Hauling incident that is now public and the cluster of infections that occurred there inside a small trucking operation. The point I would hope to emphasize through this is the need for all of us to continue to be vigilant. This is a critical time. We have done well as a province. Never perfect, but done well in terms of our responses to these issues, but we need to be vigilant. This COVID-19 enemy is an adversary that is very, very sneaky, and it needs to be one that we do not take lightly. And so that would be critical as we work together to educate one another, but also in our workplaces as we begin to reopen our economy to make sure that we're engaging in the proper fundamentals of social distancing, of hand washing, of disinfecting and creating safer environments for workers and for the customers of businesses at the same time. And of course, this is important not just in the trucking industry, but throughout our economy.
From CBC Manitoba, Ian.
Good morning, Premier. Ian Fraser, CBC. Ottawa just moments ago announcing sort of a top-up plan and in agreement with the provinces. How is Manitoba's plan going to look, and sort of what employees would be eligible for the top-up?
Well, I'm very excited about this, Ian. I'll let the details be worked out in the next few days, and then we'll share those with you early next week, I expect. But I am excited about this. This is it was actually a good discussion I had with Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland on this concept about 3 weeks ago of offering some type of additional appreciation or reward, if you will, for our frontline workers. So I'm excited. I am told we're the first province to give positive response on the concept to the federal government. And I know that all Manitobans are really appreciative of what our frontline's doing. These are challenging times for everyone. I would say in particular, though, what's come out of this is a strengthened respect for the people who work on the front lines of our healthcare and social service systems. This is something that I understand this program will be able to demonstrate in a real way, and I'll let the details emerge early next week.
Okay, and for the follow-up, a report yesterday from Stats Canada shows that seniors are the least financially vulnerable of any demographic group in the country when broken down by either age and family type. considering all of that, why the decision to give seniors a $200 check when by and large they need it the least?
Well, frankly, you're looking at this from a purely financial standpoint. That was the report I believe StatsCan put out, but what you're ignoring is the reality of the stress that's on people who are 1,000 times more likely to die. If they're 75 with pre-symptoms, they'd be about 1,000 times from the numbers and the stats I've seen, 1,000 times more likely to die than a healthy 30-year-old. So let's understand something here. Everybody's under stress right now. We're developing programs to support the most vulnerable in our province. The criticism that we're helping all seniors with a $200 payment is totally ignoring the reality of the stress that is being experienced by every senior's household. Look, if you had told me, or I had told you 6 months ago that a senior who was going out to get their groceries was going to risk dying, you would have thought that quite a stretch. But that's the truth right now. That's the reality of this pandemic. And so for heaven's sakes, we put out a program to give seniors $200 to show some appreciation and respect for them. Understand that's who built this province. Understand these people deserve our respect, and they are living with stress and consequently emotional disruption that very few people, younger people, may understand unless they have spent a little bit of time in a senior's home, as I've spent a lot of time, or they've spent some time with their grandparents and talked to them and listened to the experiences they're having. It's a $200 payment to show a little respect for our seniors, a little love, a little appreciation. That's it. And a lot of seniors would appreciate that money. It might just help them pay a few bills that they didn't think they were going to have living on a fixed income. So, look, I don't mind. I am proud of the support that we're showing as a government for our seniors in our province, and we're going to continue to show that respect.
From the Canadian Press, Steve.
Steve Lambert from the Canadian Press. Premier, an environmental group issued an email this morning that said the provincial government is suspending funding this year for all projects supporting the climate and green plan. Can you confirm that? And do you have any details as to how many groups might be affected or a dollar amount?
Yeah, I think it's about 4 or 5 groups affected. I think that you understand and all Manitobans understand. 2 things. One, we were investing more in green projects. Today's announcement, by the way, is $500 million, of which we'll do a number of green projects. So we're investing more as a government in green than any previous government in the history of Manitoba, and today expands on those investments. Secondly, we're looking for savings that we can redirect to our front line. We have frontline expenses that were not anticipated that are going to add up to billions of additional dollars. So advocacy groups have been notified in this category that their funding will be suspended for a time. We'll review it. And I should mention that we have expanded in this very category our investments to record levels, including but not limited to over $150 million additional dollars for conservation and green projects. So this is the case for, I believe, 4 or 5 advocacy groups that have been notified that the funding will be suspended so that we can redirect it to the front line, and it'll be reviewed, and then we'll make decisions in due course on how we invest. But the fact of the matter is, all of us are in this together, and that includes advocacy groups.
And are other advocacy groups in other areas outside the environment, like advocacy groups on social programs and that sort of thing, are they getting similar letters from the government?
I'm only aware of this particular category, Steve. I'm not aware of others, but I will tell you, we're in a pandemic, and we're going to find resources for our front line. And we have a choice here. We can either manage from within and find lower priority investments right now that we can put into high priority frontline investments, or we're just going to simply add to the debt and put it all on our kids. And those are the choices. So right now we're looking for balanced and intelligent ways to manage within the resources that we have, knowing that we're going to be borrowing billions of dollars on our kids doesn't make me comfortable or happy, but I think Manitobans understand that's the necessity. The key point is we're finding resources. These resources are being directed to the front line, to the top priorities we have right now. We don't have money for everything. We need money for the front line.
From CTV Winnipeg, Jeff.
Hi, Mr. Premier. Jeff from CTV Winnipeg. Obviously, all municipalities have infrastructure needs, but with this $500 million is extra, have you, as your government, identified any major, as you call them, shovel-worthy projects within the city of Winnipeg, or projects like the South Perimeter, the Headingley or St. Lawrence bypasses, anything that you've already identified?
Yeah, we've got a great big long list. We have an infrastructure deficit in this country. Manitoba is no exception. And we've always, when we work with the municipalities, for example, Jeff, had way more applications than we could possibly meet. What we're committing to do today is to add to our budget over the next 2 years approximately $500 million additional provincial tax dollars. And what we believe will happen as a consequence of that is that we'll also leverage some additional supports from other levels of government, including the federal government. We're in negotiations with them right now. So yeah, we have identified a number of priority projects, and we're looking to expand on those investments with the support of a heavy construction industry. I'd mentioned, by the way, that we are not going to be limiting the ability of workers or companies to participate in the tendering process to just those companies that are unionized. We're going to allow the 80% of the heavy construction industry that isn't unionized to also participate in this without an additional levy or fee being put in front of them. So that's going to mean better participation, better value for money for taxpayers, and that everybody in the industry can participate. This is what the heavy construction industry has been asking for years. This is how we're going to run the tendering process in Manitoba.
My follow-up question, now that we're, into phase 1 of the reopening plan and phase 2, I guess, possibly June 1st, what is the thinking on daycare? Obviously, schools aren't reopening, but what about daycare? Because people going back to work, there'll be more and more people going back to work. And we're hearing a lot from parents, like, what do I do? When is my daycare open? Yeah,
Heather Stephenson is going to have more of an update on that. I think, I won't say early next week, I think it's next week. I can only tell you that we recognize as a government that this, we inherited a list of about 16,000 people waiting for childcare in this province when we came into government. We've started to whittle it down. We're working very hard with the Child Care Association. We thank them for their understanding and patience with the decisions we've had to make to restrict the numbers, somewhat in our daycares. And with the gradual reopening and their cooperation, we believe we can accommodate additional children. That's really important as the economy reopens, because clearly childcare has been a priority and it's going to continue to be a priority as we reopen our economy. So we're on it. It's a problem of long standing, but we continue to look to build on the partnerships that we've worked so hard on, and I thank Minister Stephenson for her diligent work on this file.
From City News, Stephanie.
Mr. Premier, Stephanie with City News. You said that some projects have already been identified kind of as priority projects for you guys. Could you just outline what some of those projects might be, or just in general what the decision-making might look like for identifying which projects will be prioritized?
Sure, good question, Stephanie. There have been many projects put forward. What we're looking at is not just shovel-ready projects. There's always an abundance of those, but shovel-worthy projects. And by that I mean projects that have a higher established potential return on investment for Manitobans. Projects that will not only create jobs in the short term, and that is important, but also create better opportunities for access, transportation, attracting additional business, small business to our province. We've been doing pretty well on that, and we want to get back to that. And frankly, with our partnerships with the municipalities and the federal government and the dialogue we've had on these types of projects and the prioritization exercises we've intensified here in Manitoba, we're really confident that we can get a good return for Manitobans on these projects. I'd mention that the heavy construction industry, of course, is in a bit of a valley too, because as the private sector suffers, and we are all sharing in that with this pandemic, the amount of business they can do outside of government starts to go down. As that goes down, we can address that by increasing public investments and keep the construction industry busy, occupied, and also competitive. And it's a competitive industry in Manitoba with tremendous companies of various sizes engaged in it. So we know that we can get good value for money by shopping smart within Manitoba. We have a great industry there that wants to participate, wants to build, wants to grow. And so it is really important as we move forward to recognize we're not just investing in projects. Well, you know, Franklin Delano Roosevelt during the Depression, because of all the people that were out of work, actually had people go and dig holes and then had another crew go in and fill them in. This is not the kind of projects we're going to undertake here. We're going to be building up our infrastructure to increase our capacity to grow our economy in Manitoba, and we'll come out of this resilient.
And how soon do you envision some of these projects actually getting underway?
Sorry, Stephanie, you cut out on me. If you just repeat that, I can get you an answer.
Sorry, how soon do you envision some of these projects getting underway at the earliest?
Fairly quickly, Stephanie. We have capacity now. As I mentioned, the industry has the capacity. We have engineered many projects, so the planning has been done. The prioritization has been, to a great degree, addressed. The only delays may, again, have happened at the federal level in terms of various approval mechanisms that they have, and that bureaucracy is a challenge. There's no doubt about that. But moving forward, I think that there's a growing willingness on the part of our partners to see us make progress on these projects, and I'm excited to see us do that.
From the Winnipeg Free Press, Carol.
Good morning, Premier. It's Carol Sanders at the Free Press. Saskatchewan's already announced that those making less than $2,500 a month in a field with vulnerable people are eligible for a wage top-up of $400 per month for 16 weeks, and that includes long-term care homes, daycares, and shelters. I know you aren't releasing any details, but can you say if Manitoba is considering something similar after the Prime Minister's announcement this morning?
Well, Carol, I would just say this, that we advanced the concept in discussion with the federal government, I think more than 3 weeks ago. We're excited. I am told we're the first province to actually confirm our support for this concept. And so I'll let the details be announced at the appropriate time, I think early next week, frankly. I do, of course, because the federal government just made the announcement, I believe, minutes ago, I do want to make sure that the detail conforms with what my understanding was of what we were going to be doing. But I am very excited to see this additional recognition being given.
Okay, and for a follow-up, I was going to ask, Manitoba's projecting a $5 billion deficit, and the RBC says our projected shortfall is more like a $1.5 billion with the rainy day fund depleted. How do you account for the difference? What's missing?
Well, I would say I hope they're right, and I would say they're working in the dark, and so are we, because we're in the middle of an unprecedented pandemic. And I would say we're already a good portion of the way there just with protective equipment purchasing, Carol. So I hope they're right. But again, you know, we've seen projections on the number of deaths put out by governments being 500% range. So I won't apologize for us giving you what we thought at the time was a pretty accurate number. We're going to review it, and as I committed to you a couple of days ago, as we review our numbers and as we experience the reality of this pandemic instead of the theory of it, we'll be able to give you better numbers. But that was an honest projection, I think, by our Treasury Board officials in government early on. And as I said, I hope it gets lower. A lot of that's going to depend on Manitobans, quite frankly, and our willingness to continue to abide by the fundamentals of social distancing, keep the COVID pandemic at bay, and we're going to have a V on our graph We went down fast like every other jurisdiction. What we'd like to do is have a V, not an L, on the graph. And if that's the case, by gosh, I'll bet you that we'll do better than those projected numbers. That would certainly be the hope.
From Global, Marnie.
Good afternoon, Mr. Premier. Marnie Blunt from Global News. Just kind of adding on to Carol's first question about the federal government's top-up pay program for essential service workers. I know you said there will be more to come at a later date, but at this moment, do you have any indication of an anticipated or approximate dollar amount that Manitoba could see from this?
Yeah, I do, Marnie, and I don't like putting off answers, but I just got told on this call that the feds had done their announcement, so I'm not predisposed to jump in here with any projections on details until I have a chance to read what the announcement actually was.
All right, thank you for that. And just as a follow-up, still hearing many concerns over the limited prescriptions. I know you said the health minister will be addressing this at a later date, but just that we've already started the reopening plan and businesses are reopening, and this is an issue we've been hearing many concerns about since the pandemic started. Why wasn't this included in the reopening plan?
I'm sorry, you clicked out on me, Marnie. Again, I'm not sure what was the thing that wasn't included. I need you to repeat your question. I'm sorry.
Sorry, the limits on prescriptions.
Yes, I think that the health minister has something to say on that tomorrow. So yeah, that's definitely been a concern. I know there's obviously the rationale that was put out by the federal government and by the pharmacy industry, I believe, initially, was a real fear that with the pandemic's impacts on supplier countries, in particular, I guess we'd say China, India would be big ones, that there might be real shortages of drugs, and therefore this was the rationale for the limits. I think some of those concerns have been on some drugs have been addressed, and so I know the minister will have a detailed answer for you on that tomorrow.
From the Brandon Sun, Drew.
Thank you. It's Drew May from the Brandon Sun. Mr. Premier, on the announcement today, you're talking about shovel-worthy projects. Now, have all the projects that are going to be funded already been decided on, or will municipalities be able to apply for this funding?
Well, municipalities have been pretty forthcoming. I had my colleagues and I had actually interaction with close to 50, I believe, RMs last week. My friends at the municipal government level aren't shy about advocating for infrastructure, and I haven't been shy about engaging in those discussions over the years either. So we're very excited. The response I got from municipal governments and my colleagues did in their meetings was very enthusiastic about not just the level of support for our partnership, but in a real way participation in these ventures as we move forward. I know will be enthusiastically engaged in by the municipal partners that we work with.
Okay, thank you. And just to follow up on the news yesterday about the cluster of cases at Paul's Hauling here in Brandon. But with that now being known, would you anticipate any restrictions on truckers or any new measures there that might be coming in?
Well, my understanding from Dr. Rusin is that this is, though a significant cluster case, that it's confined to this particular work site. Obviously, this should serve to all of us as a reminder of how sneaky this virus is, how dangerous it is, and how critically important it is to follow our practices on social distancing. Stay home when you're sick. Make sure that you pursue the testing. We're broadening that. We're investing very, very significant amounts of taxpayer dollars in expanding our testing capacity. I should mention, by the way, and I should thank Cadam Lab for the tremendous work they've done. Dynacare for agreeing to take on a lot of the excess demand and address it. And also say this is good news for Manitobans because Cadam Lab doesn't just test for COVID. COVID's all in the news these days, and it's all many people think about. But Cadam Lab also does additional testing on numerous other conditions. This will free up some capacity for that lab to be able to do a lot more testing. And that'll help, obviously, those who are dealing with other health conditions unrelated to COVID. So I think this is really good news. But again, just a reminder to everyone to adhere to the social distancing strategies, do everything you can to stay safe, and make sure as the weather warms up and as we get into a little bit more outdoor time that you keep an eye on your kids and grandkids and make sure they're doing the same things, because we want to keep them safe too, obviously.
From CJOB, Diana.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. Diana from 680 CJOB. Just following up on Carol's question with regards to the difference in projected deficits, are you able to say how much the province has spent on securing PPE so far?
I don't have the numbers in front of me. The last update I had, I think we were well over $1 billion. Obviously, value for money is a let's just put it mildly here. Let's just say, in a world pandemic without precedent, the shortage of PPE means the price goes up. So getting value for money in the context of the personal protective equipment purchasing challenges that we're facing as a province, as a country, around the world, it's an onerous proposition. I thank our civil servants that are working so hard to get value for money and to find contacts and to pursue them to get us this equipment. And I thank everyone for their patience as we all understand that we are first and foremost trying to keep our frontline people as safe as we can. I know that there'll be additional challenges going forward as we're able to open up our economy, and small businesses and others will want to be able to procure equipment. But I appreciate your patience and thank you for it. This isn't something that Manitoba alone is facing. In fact, quite frankly, our challenges are far less than those of other places around the country and around the world right now.
And then just as a follow-up, on another note, some other premiers, John Horgan in BC, Doug Ford in Ontario, Jason Kenney in Alberta, have reached out to the NHL to kind of offer them a place to act as a hub for hockey games if the season were to go forward as a televised season without fans. Have you given any thought to this kind of situation? What would your take be on that here in Manitoba?
Well, I'm happy. I've talked to Dana Spiring over at Economic Development Winnipeg. I think it's really important to understand the balance. Clearly, I've offered any support that I can give in respect of Manitoba and Winnipeg being used by the NHL. We're a safer jurisdiction than most of their other cities, to put it mildly. That being said, we're going to have to work with the advice of the medical health professionals that we trust to give us advice, and make sure that when and if we're chosen to pursue this as an opportunity, that we're doing it safely for our citizens and for any people who may choose to come here to enjoy some of the finest hockey in the world.
From the Winnipeg Sun, Josh.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. This is Josh Aldridge from the Winnipeg Sun. To build off of what Jeff was asking earlier about some local projects, in particular, there's been much talk about over the last number of months and years or so about the North End Waste Treatment Center. That would also tick off environmental concerns as well. That box anyway. Is there potential for more funding from the province for that project, or is it what the province has announced is what the province is going to announce for that project?
Yeah, certainly water and sewer projects are at the top of our list, and so the North End project is also very high priority for our government. As you know, our government has been advancing the dialogue with the city, trying to move this project forward because we think it's critical to protect the safety of not just our waterways through the city, but also Lake Winnipeg, which is a high priority for our government. It was noted under a previous administration, this is the most endangered lake in the world, and we don't want that title. We want to get rid of that title. So we're looking to move forward on that and many other projects, and this is a great news announcement, I think, for beginning the process of rebuilding our province from the ground up.
Okay. My follow-up question has to do with seniors. When we're looking at infrastructure spending, speaking with long-term care association last week, and they're talking about major issues in terms of infrastructure for some long-term care facilities for seniors. There's a pretty big issue that for retrofits and fixing up those facilities. When we're looking at something like COVID-19 and protecting them, especially with how deadly the virus can be in those situations, is there going to be any infrastructure funding coming from the province to address some of these concerns, whether it's in Winnipeg or other parts of the province?
Yeah, you raised two really important issues there, Josh. I mean, the one is it's certainly true that as part of our commitment, we're committing to hospital and personal care home investments, and we plan on continuing to do that. But the second part of your question relates to what modifications or changes may we have to make as a consequence of the reality of COVID. Given that seniors are our most at-risk cohort, they're the most, certainly I addressed this earlier a little bit, I guess, perhaps a little too passionately, but I believe very strongly our seniors deserve our respect and appreciation, and they are living with stresses that most of us can't identify with. So certainly in our personal care home facilities, our hospital facilities, it's critical that we make the necessary alterations, not just in practice, but potentially in our capital investments to make these facilities, even safer than they are for those at risk from COVID, not exclusively, but largely our senior population. Thanks to everybody for your interest in the issues today, and if I could, on a personal note, I just want to say thank you to Manitobans for the outpouring of support and condolence to our family in the loss of my sister. Have a good weekend.